right. We are grateful to be together today and appreciate everybody joining us today for this episode. Thanks to Eric Wilkie for setting this up and our Joel Richards. I already like this guy. He's got a great first name. I think it's underutilized and underappreciated in our culture. But anyway,
definitely.
Before I go off on a tangent, Dr. Richard, would you introduce yourself and kind of give us a background of your training and then what you've developed over the last period of your career?
Yeah, sure. I appreciate y'all having me on. This is a lot of fun for me. Again, my name is Joel Richards. I'm from Houston, Texas. I'm a family medicine physician by training. I did mainly just small rural ER. When I got out, probably for about 8 years, I really enjoyed it. At that point, where I worked, they had lost several physicians, some of the full-time physicians, so it got very busy for me. I was one of the only full-time guys there, so it got to be kind of a strain. I was working every other day, basically. So I had a friend who worked at some of the the ERs that were gaining popularity at the time, the freestanding ERs. And I eventually went over to that world, and it was great. And I worked there for maybe a couple of years until I worked at one in where I live currently, and it didn't last very long, maybe 6 months. And the one I had worked before that, the same thing happened. I mean, it was great for me, and then it closed down just due to mismanagement and just not being ran very well. Same thing happened. So that was two positions in probably less than a year and a half that just shut down with no fault of my own. So that was for me, because I'm like, look, I know what I'm doing. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not cheating anybody. I'm trying to do well, and I have no say-so in the matter. It's just, as are other physicians I work with, we're in the same boat. And then around that same time, I went on a trip with our church to Honduras area, like a medical trip, mission trip, and I loved it. I would have stayed there if I was not married and no kids, to be honest. It was so much fun. It was, people super excited to see you. They stood in line 8 hours in the blazing heat, and the last person was just as excited as the first person. So, it got me wondering, like, why are people here so excited? I really was not doing anything, to be honest, just talking, saying hi. But at home, if people aren't seen in a minute or two, waiting in the AC, waiting room, they're irate, storming out, angry. So what's the difference here? That really got my wheels turning. And then I was there when I found out the current position closed, the facility shut down. So when I was going home, I wasn't going to have a job.
So you found that out when you were in Honduras?
Correct. Yes.
That's stressful.
Yeah. So the main physician called me, and it was weird to get a phone call there, first of all, from work. And so he said, "Hey, just want you to know, they shut us down." I was like, okay, well, I can't do much about it from here, so I'll deal with it when I get home. But that got me thinking. At the same time, I was having all this fun practicing medicine, and I was thinking, why is it so much more enjoyable for me and for the patients here than it is at home? That got my wheels turning. Then I realized, hey, I didn't have a job, and I'd already kind of thought about doing currently what I was doing. I was like, it's now or never. I'm not getting any younger. I mean, if it fails, at least I'll know I tried it. And so that's kind of how I got started.
So give us an idea of kind of how, like, what exactly your day-to-day looks like, how you set this company up that you're working with now.
Yeah, so at the beginning, when I came home, my plan was hey, I'm just going to be a physician for hire, basically. Like Dr. Wilkie knows, I mean, a lot of the stuff you see in the ER isn't truly emergent, especially where I was in the rural stuff. A lot of it was primary care or sick visits. I'm like, heck, I could do that just in person. I don't need a lot of materials and equipment to do that. So that was my thinking. And again, I am not a risk taker, and I like it nice and safe, and don't like a lot of change. So it's kind of surprising for me now that I even did it. But did it and was thinking, hey, if it doesn't work out, I'll go get a job in another ER or urgent care or something like that. I would be able to find a job. So at that point, it was basically, hey, you need a doctor? I'll come over. I'll do anything. That's the beauty of, I think, especially the ER trained guys. I mean, me being family medicine, I could do blood pressure, I could do stitches, you name it. I don't mind. I'm comfortable. Pregnant lady, I'm comfortable. It doesn't bother me. So that was kind of the initial idea and model. Was like, hey, I need a doctor. I'll come to your house and I'll take care of you. If it's a sick visit or your blood pressure medicine, whatever it is, it was kind of like a mobile urgent care, if I had to put a label on it. That's how it started. I would just use it in my neighborhood. I put it on our little neighborhood Facebook page. And fortunately, my wife is very social, unlike me, and she had a lot of friends she could tell. And that's kind of how it started. It's like a mobile urgent care.
How long did it take
word
you?
of mouth, huh?
Yeah. How long did it take you to get your first patient or your first client?
That's funny. It could be stressful because I had no money coming in, and I was just contingent on, did I see somebody today? So I remember exactly who the first patient was. It was someone in my neighborhood, and exactly what was wrong with them. They had a little contact dermatitis. And I remember exactly going there. It was probably the first 4 days I had a patient. But it was someone in the neighborhood that knew my wife. And it kind of just grew from there. It was maybe one every 2 days, and then as the sweat trickled more and more down my forehead, it was maybe one every other day. I remember distinctly getting to the 1 a day mark, and I was so excited. I was averaging 1 patient a day. And then really, I would say at that point, it really kind of started getting busier. We had a horrendous flu season that year. I think it was 2017. Really busy. And honestly, that really helped me out because I had flu tests and I could come do a flu test on you and treat you. And, the public's dismay was a boon for me because it really got my name out there. I'm like, hey, this guy will just come do a flu test at your house. You don't have to go out. And that really helped a lot too.
So you went from 1 patient every 4 days, so eventually getting to a patient a day. So how about now? Now I know it's kind of seasonal. It's summer, so it's probably lower than the winter. But
yes, I would say so. Right now, I would say in the busy times, as you know, December, January, we're probably 55 a day, 50 to 55 patients a day. The valleys, probably like July, were maybe 35, give or take. That's kind of about where we are right now.
So Joel, 35 patients a day. I'm just kind of doing the math in my head, driving around town, like you could easily eat up an hour, going to and from your house. Like,
yes.
So how are you able to see 30 to 50 patients a day?
Yeah, that was a big challenge. And I learned really quickly what the maximum number a day we could see was, especially during flu season. I mean, I think the most I saw was 17 in one day driving around. And, I didn't have a staff, so I would drive after the visit, call the pharmacy on the way to the next patient, put that medicine in, see that patient, make my notes, call the pharmacy, so there was a lot of that. So that was a challenge for sure. And was how do I make it efficient where I can see maybe the people in South College Station together and the people up in North Bryan together instead of going back and forth. So we had to really come up with a geographical boundary, which initially I didn't do because, I needed to get everybody I could get. So I didn't care where you lived. That was my only income. But over time, we've had to really define our boundaries. That helped. And then just say, look, we have to see people in these boundaries. We can't make it work. And then having, colleagues that work with me that we can split up areas that really made a difference.
So I guess some people that may be listening to this and thinking, all right, so do you take insurance? How do you handle insurance? Is this cash only? Like how do you do that?
Yes, definitely. I mean, from the beginning, it was going to be no insurance. And we can talk forever about the problems with insurance. And I think going back to my initial story about why was it the people in Honduras so excited to see me, and the people in College Station, not that they weren't excited to see me, but they'd get angry if it was 2 minutes late and, or whatever. And to me, it was value. It was valuable for those people in Honduras to see me. It wasn't that valuable. There was no value for it for these folks in College Station and everywhere else in the United States for the most part. And so how did they lose value? Where did healthcare lose its value? And to me, part of that is a complicated answer, I think, but part of it is the insurance. It's so complicated. I mean, I would bet you could take any person off the street and say, explain to me your health insurance. They would probably be able to tell you what the copay is, but that's probably about it. I would say, what do you pay for an out-of-network hospital stay? I bet you they wouldn't be able to, right? And I think it's meant to be that way. It's confusing as heck. And it changes all the time. And I think it's meant to be confusing because then you just go along with it. And you're like, well, this is what I have to have. I'm supposed to pay $1,000, no, it's $1,200 a month, but what else am I going to do? I think at that point you start losing the value because you paying $1,000 a month. You go to the doctor, you pay $75. Then you get a bill from Dr. Bob, who you don't even know who that is, in 6 months, and you pay that bill. There's no value. Whereas the people in Honduras are like, this is valuable. I know if I show up, even though I'm not paying anything, my cost is sitting in line. That's my decision I made. It's valuable for me. So I think at the very beginning, I was not going to take insurance. I wanted people to know exactly what it was going to cost, and they could make it up their own mind whether it was valuable enough to come see me or for me to come see them.
So have you modified do you take insurance now?
We don't. We still are insurance, and I guess it limits some of our growth, but that's just not what we do. There's other places that will take insurance, and more power to them. For me to try to keep my costs down, as you well know, I take insurance. It's going up because I have to hire staff to bill, and I gotta have just someone that always does that. And that's just not what I'm trying to do. So no, we don't take insurance, and don't claim to be honest.
Do you find that most of your patients have insurance or have some sort of insurance and then pay out of pocket just for the convenience and the service that you offer?
That's a great question. I would say there's a really good mix. You would, I think, initially think, oh, it's people who don't have insurance, but that's not the case. We have plenty of people with insurance who say this is just convenience and I'm paying a copay anyway. So yeah, no, I would say it's a really good mix of both. We have a lot of people who don't have insurance, and most of those, to be honest, are self-employed small business owners and stuff who just don't have insurance. But we also have people who have insurance through their company, and you name it, we have a good mix.
What's your repeat business? Do you get the patients call you multiple times?
Yes, sir. I think the biggest hurdle for patients and us is just, it's different. You know, it's been, we're trained to what to do for healthcare. You have insurance, you go to the doctor, you might as well just block out the whole day. You don't know how long it's going to take, but that's just how it goes. So this being different, like, hey, I can just schedule online and he's going to be here in 30 minutes. Who is this guy? Is this like some guy? Is he a quack? That was a big thing. Is that tell people, hey, I am actually a physician,
Yeah. Is this guy even a doctor?
Yes, that was a big hurdle initially. So once people, that's the biggest hurdle. Once people use us honestly, they use us multiple times.
Yeah, that was kind of the interesting thought I was having when I asked the question. It's like, because if you get repeat business, then that speaks to their valuing the service, right? They like it enough that they're willing to continue to pay for it.
Right. Yeah. No. If we can just get people to make one visit, usually and even if it's not valuable enough to them because they have insurance, they will tell 5 people about it, and then we'll have 5.
That's interesting. I have a question for you about the patient interaction. One of the things that Dr. Wilkie and I have been recently looking at is the physician-patient interaction and interface. And you mentioned a lot of that frustration that we seem to feel when we see a patient and they've been waiting for, a few minutes or whatever. The physician's overwhelmed. You've got 10 patients going. You're trying to pick up another one. You're trying to juggle all this stuff. What have you noticed, in the kind of one-on-one interaction? It's different. It's a different world. It would seem.
Oh, it is. I mean, it is. I have a little class I give where I have a diagram that shows all the go-betweens patients normally have in traditional healthcare before they actually see the provider. And then ours, there is no go-between. It's just, it's us. They're the only people they interact with. So no, it's really enjoyable, I think, when I've heard from the patients, but honestly, it's really enjoyable for the providers. It's just refreshing. It's much more relaxed. It's not a super high pace. I mean, it's, hey, what can I help you out with? Basically, we don't have forms. We do all the forms online, so that we don't carry documents and HIPAAs and disclosure. I mean, it's just, what can I help you out with? And that's it. And is it, first communication is better, but honestly, the visits are quicker because we get right down to it and people will say, man, he spends 45 minutes in my house, but honestly, I was there like 12 minutes. It just seems longer because I'm not in a rush. There's no one coming in. There's no one knocking. Hey, you want to look at this lab result? I mean, it's just us interacting. And then when it's over, then we're done, So it's that's one of the more enjoyable things about it.
So
That's great.
I don't want to get too into secret things, but people maybe think, all right, do you have to take a big pay cut to do this? Like, do you sell your house and you're driving around in a Yugo, or
I thought about it a couple of times. No, that's a great question. I'll be honest. I would say in the ER, if I'm comparing what I made, the year I made the most revenue working in the ER, it probably took me several years to get to that point. Probably at least 5. So yes, I would say I did make less, especially initially. I didn't make anything. So I definitely made less. However, I don't feel it. I didn't feel it, to be honest. It was so much more enjoyable, especially once I really, learned a few things about business and got some help. I would say, yeah, I did make less for a while, but I didn't notice it, and it was so much more enjoyable for me that I would trade it any day of the week.
So you said you made less for a while.
Yes.
So to me, I'm inferring that that's no longer the case.
It's no longer the case. I think if I really get down on the financials, I would make at least what I was making my best year in the ER. And that's what I've learned a lot. I mean, we could talk forever about the things I've learned on the business side, but once I finally learned it's okay to pay myself, which took several years, to be honest, things got much better after that. So I fell into the normal entrepreneurial trap of, I take whatever's left after everything is paid for, everything is done, and, there's nothing ever left. So once my mindset on that, it improved greatly. And then I realized, hey, I am actually making some money off this thing. And it really improved. So I think it was always there. It was just my mindset of how I looked at it.
So speaking of that, like what did you have to learn? What were the biggest things you're like, oh boy, if I could go back in time and tell myself blank before getting started, what are the big takeaways that you've had to learn the hard way?
Oh my gosh. I think the first thing is get some help quicker. I think the first, I started in September of 2017, August 2017. That flu season was, as I mentioned, horrendous. And by the end of within a year, I was moving at a pretty good clip, and I had there was no admin. I was answering the phones and doing all that. But I was making it work, and kick it off for another year, and it was even busier, and I was still doing it. I just waited too long to get help, and it was making me not a good person. I was getting to where I didn't enjoy it. It was, in my family definitely didn't enjoy it. So I would have gotten help quicker. And that was definitely number one I would have done. That would have made it much nicer for my wife for a while.
What help? Like an additional physician or more administrative business?
More administrative. I think the fish addition stuff I had down. It was answering phones. And hey, this lady's credit card was put in incorrectly. I got to go back in and charge that. This one didn't get a receipt. She needs a school note for 2 visits. It's all that stuff that I was doing, but I was, it's just human nature. You control it. I was controlling this, and it was just my little model. I was tinkering, and I knew how to do it, even though I was, working ridiculous and didn't care about anybody else. I was managing this, so. Just administrative help, was a whole new world for me. Someone that could answer the phones. And then what I learned is she was 10 times better than I was at it. So, which is, another thing I learned is, hire people. They're usually better than you at it. So that was a big thing. I think, like I mentioned, paying myself, telling yourself it's okay to pay yourself something. That was another thing I learned later on that I wish I would have learned. I didn't come from a family of business owners, and honestly, that wasn't a big desire. Truthfully, I'm not an entrepreneurial guy. It's not like I sat around wanting to own a business my whole life. So I didn't have a lot of people to ask about, talk to about it. And there's a weird model. So it wasn't like a lot of physicians. They say, hey, how do you do this? How do this work? So it was just kind of, trial and error, and a lot of error at the beginning.
So how'd you learn that, to pay yourself first?
Honestly, I found some business owners that I respect in the community, talked to them, and it made me feel better that a lot of them had the same issues I had, especially initially. And then I knew I could pay myself, didn't know how that really looked. How does that work? And then I read First, honestly. And so
right here, Profit First.
It was a life changer, if anyone's out there who's listening, and is a business mind. It's really easy book to read and such a simple concept and things, I've already doing that in other aspects of my life, but I was just so hard-headed. I didn't think about doing it in my business life. But that was a big game changer for me. And it made me feel okay to do that, not just to pay myself, but not feel guilty about it and be like, well, I need to do this or do that or pay this person more, and that was really helpful.
You mentioned something earlier on about, kind of that time period where you're making that jump from, I want to say the safer, what would appear to be at least a safer option of kind of just getting a job at an ER, the urgent care, and just putting in your hours. But as those collapsed, there must have been a moment though where you said, is this going to work? And I'm jumping in with both feet. And that, to me, I think for a lot of providers is a scary thought. It's like, do I play it safe and just go with what I know, or do I work with this model that I think will work? And how did you come to that conclusion and make that jump?
Yeah, that's a great question. I honestly, I don't know why I did that. I'm not the mindset. I'm telling you, y'all. I know for sure. Dr. Billy, I mean, he's an entrepreneurial guy. I'm really not like that. My brother, super entrepreneurial guy. I am not. And I think I felt forced. If I really had to dig deep, I felt forced. 2 places that I work at that I really enjoyed, and that I worked hard at, just went under with nothing I could have done about it. And knowing that it was just because it was ran poorly, that this greed took over, and that was the only reason. And so I felt like, hey, if I'm going to do this, I'm on my own. And I need to do this. And I've always had this idea, and I had ran it by lots of people, close friends, other friends. Hey, do you think this would work? And everyone was like, yeah, man, I would do that in a heartbeat. And I also had the confidence knowing, hey, if I need to go get a job at an urgent care or something, I would be able to get one. Yeah. So I was like, look, I'd rather be 80 years old knowing I tried it and it failed than wondering if it ever would have worked out. That was a big thing at the end of the day. And I was like, hey, let me just try. I didn't know if it was going to work for a week or 20 years. I don't know. And, it just kept, progressing and progressing and progressing. But I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I wasn't like a moment where I'm like, this is it. Finally, my entrepreneurial time has come. Was not the case for me.
Right, well, I think that's good, because I think a lot of people will have, I think in medicine specifically, will have these ideas and think like, should I do this or should I do that? But they're waiting for that like epiphany to come, like, the heavens to open and like, right, you are supposed to do this. And that's good. That's good insight, because I think a lot of us wait, and then I know a good portion of us look back at the end of our career thinking, I wonder if that would have worked. I wonder if this would have been productive,
So Joel, what's the saying? It's like, for every overnight success, I'll show you 7 years of hard work, right?
True.
So you went from sweating bullets, seeing a patient every 4 days. Take us to where you are now.
Yeah. So now it's, I do much more of the business stuff. Not through any specific desire, but, I have colleagues that are hired on, and I need them to see patients. And I want patients to know that's who they're going to see, not me. And, in medicine, you go see somebody and they're like, oh, I love this. I'd like to see you next time. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm only filling in today for Bob. He's out, that doesn't work. So I want them to be seeing the patient. So I don't see many patients these days. I do fill in some, and when it's in the seasonal times, I may do some afternoons here and there just because I like to do it. But I really, my whole focus is, and you hear every business is culture and trying to make this a good place to work. Because honestly, one thing I did learn is the patients love it, but the providers love this model. I mean, every provider I had said I should have done this 10 years ago. And the biggest, just like patients, the biggest hurdle is the first step. Hey, the risk of doing it. So it's hard for me to to compete financially with the big hospital systems kind of and St. Jude. I just can't financially compete with this. So I got to have something. I got to have a great place to work. And that's my focus. And honestly, people ask me all the time, well, don't you miss seeing patients? I do, but my employees are my patients. That's who I try to take care of every day. What can I do for you? How can I make this easier? Take time off, just leave, take it off. I'll take care of, that's really my main focus. I know every business says that, but I have to do that because I cannot compete financially with some of the big guys.
So Joel,
so that's what I do.
So Joel, but you started off, so Bryan College Station is a town of, between the Twin Cities and this kind of immediate surrounding areas, probably close to 250,000, right? And so, but you're not just in Bryan College Station anymore. So how many docs work for you or with you, and where are you now?
So yes, we are in the Bryan College Station area. Then we're down in the Woodlands area, just kind of north Houston-ish area.
Yeah, Joel ran a triathlon through there not too long ago.
Yeah, survived the Ironman there, but just barely.
That's impressive. That's great. Then we're also in the Conroe area, which is not far from that. And then we're also in Waco. So Waco, the Woodlands, Conroe, and College Station area. As far as doctors, I think we probably have total 15 employees, 15 full-time employees, a couple of 3 administrative staff. We have 4 physicians on, and then we have 5 or 6 nurse practitioners or PA who are fantastic. So that's kind of what we're looking at.
That's quite a bit different than September of 2017.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
So if there's somebody that's thinking, you know what, boy, this sounds like this would save my career. Like I'd really like to do something different. Like, what would you tell them? You'd call you and get a franchise?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that is another big challenge. Honestly, you hear about physician shortages, and when you're working in a practice with 20 other physicians, it's kind of hard to understand that, or even in a hospital. But it's real when you try to hire them. There aren't any ones that are worth working with. So that's been a challenge, finding physicians. You live in Timbuktu, like, hey, I wouldn't mind doing something. I will always help out just with what not to do usually. But I'm always willing to talk to people. I love talking business, even though I'm not a big business guy, but I love learning about business. I'll put it that way. So feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Eric brought up an interesting point, though. I mean, like, let's say you're in, Arizona, New Mexico, or somewhere, and you think, like, man, I would love to get something like this started. Yeah. But I would prefer not to go through all those super lean years that you went through learning. Is there any kind of do you have a franchise? Do you have a model where you say, hey, we can sponsor things to get things going, get you up on your feet and rolling? Yeah,
that's a great question, and that's been an interesting aspect that I've been looking at. The franchise, and it gets very legal and falls under a lot of regulation, mainly because it's a healthcare entity. So, I mean, y'all know there can be no even appearance that I'm influencing someone how to practice medicine. So having a franchise of doc in Tucson is starting to get close, even though I would never do that. I don't want to do that. But even the appearance of, hey, is there even a possibility that this is happening? It gets into kind of muddy waters. And so, especially across state lines. So it's been a challenge to come up with a good franchise model. I mean, you can either franchise it, right? Or you can just have the option would be an employee and just put a doc healthcare out there and they become an employee. That's kind of what we've gone that route just because we've gone through so many lawyers and it gets really gray. And some are like, hey, if you're really don't mind the risk, you can do it. And I've just never been, again, I'm not a risky guy. So it was never that big a factor. And most of the people we've been in contact with are like, hey, I'm fine being an employee. And giving them, we work out ownership percentages and things, which I'm always willing to do. I want people to enjoy. There's so many physicians out there who do not like being a physician, which is sad because it's such a great occupation. I mean, who gets to do that? I mean, if you were to give people 3 wishes, I guarantee you healthcare is at least in one of the top 3. And we get to directly affect that. It should be a great job, not something that you're just buying time and you're burned out and go to the next one and get burned out. I mean, that's horrible. So I'm always wanting to let physicians know there is places where you can enjoy what you're doing. And then you're a better physician, to be honest.
Yeah, that's awesome. I found the same. I found that, it just seems like the system is, I don't think it was designed purposely, but it just kind of crushed that out of a lot of us docs where it's like you start with the best intentions and then after getting all these requirements like insurance things and throughput metrics and all these different things that you didn't go to med school to do, and it gradually crushes that out of you, and pretty soon you're like, why don't I like my job? I should love this, Yeah. And I see that so often. That's one thing that Eric and I are working on too, is kind of how to reinvigorate that with docs so that they can kind of find that. But this seems like an interesting idea where, maybe it's the model that's the problem, at least for some of these guys.
Right. Definitely.
Wow. Awesome, Joel. It's fantastic. I had the privilege of very early on with Joel talking. It's like, I wonder if this is a good idea. And then being able to watch this kind of grow. And so I've been fascinated with your model and cheering from the sidelines for a while. So.
Well, I appreciate it. Yes, you're definitely one of the ones I ran it by. It's like if Dr. Wilkie approves, it's probably a decent idea.
I don't know about that. That may be a bit of a stretch.
I would second that, Joel. I would second that for sure.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your time. Like I said, I wish you a lot of success. I think it's for the right people, just a fantastic model. And so this is great. Congratulations.
Well, I sure do appreciate it. And really, thanks for having me on. This is fun. I always like doing this and talking to y'all. So I appreciate it.
All right, and I'll put a link to your website on the comments of this video. So if people need to get to your website, then they just look down below and they should be able to get it.
Thank you. I sure do appreciate it.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.